Good Tuesday evening, high school sports fans. Joe Gillaway with Lingelstown Gazette Sports live from the Orchard Street studio. And this is episode number 8 of our new podcast, Gazette Sports Chat, where we'll get to know participants from various realms of the high school sports world, the student athletes who play the games, the coaches who coach them, and others connected in different ways to the entire experience. We'll introduce you to tonight's guest in just a moment, as soon as we're done thanking those responsible for bringing you tonight's show. Our Lingelstown Gazette Sports Platinum sponsors, and they are Rickabah's Electric, Payer Apparel, Ted's Bar and Grill, Freedom Financial Wealth Management, The Tire Mart, Team PA AAU Basketball, Tonino's Pizza, American Legion Post 272, Hoffman Ford, Capital Region Insurance Agency, Modern Imprint, Sam Hartley Decking, Crystal Bob from Howard Hanna Real Estate, and Underdog Sports Bar and Grill. Special thanks to those local businesses for their continued support of Lingelstown Gazette Sports and our area's student athletes. Upcoming on Gazette Sports Chat, we are working on getting Coach Cal Everett and a few of his players on the show. I just communicated with Coach Everett yesterday, and he's trying to work out a day when he's free. So it'll be someday next week, maybe Monday through Wednesday, and we got to work around their schedule. Of course, it's football season, and they got a lot on their plate. So, and then this coming Sunday, we have a recurring show, another podcast that we started, and it's going to be the high school football recap show. We're going to be doing week 3 with Terry Clark Jr., Travis Waters, Eric Thomas, and Ben Dupree. We have a really great lineup of experts, and we're 2 shows in now, and it seems like our viewers are really responding. So let's jump right into it here. Tonight's guest is a man who is arguably the most iconic and most important athlete to ever play high school sports in the Harrisburg area. From the quarterback position, he led his John Harris Pioneers teams of 1966 or 65, 66, and 67 to 3 consecutive undefeated seasons before becoming a 3-year starter at the University of Southern California, where he led his 1969 Trojans to a huge Rose Bowl victory over the University of Michigan. He then went on to a successful 7-year professional career before transitioning to life after football. It is with great respect, admiration, and appreciation I bring in Mr. Jimmy Jones. Mr. Jones, how are you?
Good, Joe. Thank you.
Yeah, I really appreciate you coming on, and we've been working on this for a few weeks, and I know that people are excited for this. You know, I mean, I'm really excited all day long. I was kind of beside myself with having this opportunity, but I've had people calling me and texting me, and so anyway, we really appreciate this, and we're going to jump right into it. With respect to time, we got a lot to talk about here. So, not born in Harrisburg, correct?
Correct.
Where are you from originally?
Wilmington, Delaware is where we were born. And but actually we lived and started the early part of our lives in Kennett Square, Pennsylvania.
Okay, that's mushroom country.
Mushroom country, yeah.
Yeah, man. So what brought you to Harrisburg?
We had a house fire, and my mother had been in Harrisburg before and had some friends up here. So her and my dad decided that we were going to strike out and try someplace new, and came up to Harrisburg. And there's a kind of a nice story behind that, because I probably would have never played football if that house fire didn't occur, because Kennett Consolidated High School, it was either their superintendent or one of the principals there, I forget exactly who it was, but one of their sons had played football, had a serious football injury, and they banned football from the school district for, I think they just started it up about 10 or 15 years ago. So there was no football in Kennett Square, Pennsylvania at the time that I would have grown up there. So actually the house fire and the opportunity to come to Harrisburg when we were about 5, 6 years old turned out to be a blessing as far as the football career that I was able to have. So
out of tragedy and heartbreak comes a whole new opportunity, right?
Exactly.
So what did your parents do?
My father was a laborer. My mother was a domestic. Pretty much worked at home. Had some odd jobs, not odd jobs, but she worked for the State Department in their cafeteria. And my dad worked for car dealership and a couple of other labor jobs, but for the most part of my young life, worked for a car dealership, S&H Pontiac, used to be down on
Okay.
Cameron Street.
All right. Yep. Familiar. And any siblings?
Yeah, three brothers.
Okay.
John, the oldest, myself, Ronald, God bless his soul, who has passed, and my youngest was Clarence, known as Moochie.
Okay. And what neighborhood you grow up in?
We grew up on the hill down in the Royal Terrace area.
Which
We
is
had
right
moved around Harrisburg a little bit, but spent most of our time when we first came to Harrisburg. We moved into the Royal Terrace area. The friend of my mother's, the Spotwood family, gave us their whole third floor, and we started out from there. Then we found a place for ourselves and moved on the other side of the hill over here near Paxton Street, then up on 19th Street, and then back over to Summit Street on the hill down at Royal Terrace, and then finally settled in on Walnut Street and spent probably, I guess we moved in there about when I was 10 years old and stayed there until I went on to college.
Okay. And what schools did you attend before John Harris?
Well, we started out, that would have been, oh man, I can't even remember the name of that school. Small school that sat back in the alley off of 13th Street. But anyhow, we went there. Then we went over to Melrose. No, I'm sorry, Schimmel, Melrose. Then back to this side of the hill, which would have been Lincoln,
Mm-hmm.
and then Edison and John Harris.
My mom used to say, Woodward, Goodward, Lincoln, Stinkin'. She went to Woodward. She went to Woodward and Edison. So I remember growing up that she used to say that. What exposed you to football? Let's jump right into that.
Basically just playing sports in the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
Back then, that's what we did. So we played every sport that you could possibly think of, pick up. But the lure and the attraction to, I guess, wanting to get deeper involved was the tremendous history of football that existed in Harrisburg, in Edison, and especially at John Harris.
Mm-hmm.
So really just a lot of schoolyard, street football until junior high school. And then when we got to junior high, I decided that I was going to finally go out. Went out as an 8th grader. Really didn't even, I didn't love the sport. We were just doing it because that's what I did it because that's what
Correct.
Kids were doing.
Right.
My friends were going out for the team. Do you think you're going to go out? Yeah, I'm going to go out, that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So we went out and made the team there. And Dennis Green, God bless his soul, he was the starting quarterback in his 9th grade year, and I was the backup. We went down to Carlisle, had a tight game down there, and we ended up losing that game. But I guess the moral to that whole story down there was that we did find out that Dennis was a much better running back than he was a quarterback, and I got a chance to get into the game, and we started to come back in close game, but we ended up losing the game. But after that, Coach Ken Dickey decided that the team would be better off if I played quarterback and Dennis played running back. So I actually started playing quarterback from that point on and had some success my 8th grade year. We had success my 9th grade year, went undefeated there. And all of a sudden, the eyes and the community and the coaches at Harris took a look and said, we think we have something coming up here. And I got a chance to go up as a sophomore and made the team, the varsity team. Played behind Steve Zeiters, who was a senior. Good enough athlete that Coach Chomp and the coaches wanted to make sure that I was on the field. And so I started at the free safety position and was the backup quarterback and got some reasonable time as a backup quarterback during that period until I got injured in about the 4th or 5th game of the season when I broke my neck down in a game down in York.
Now, could you tell from an early age that you kind of were good at quarterback?
Yeah, I knew at an early age that there was something about me that had leadership.
Mm-hmm.
And from the classroom to sports, I just always had that feeling that if I was going to compete and be involved, I wanted to try to be the best that I could be.
Right.
So I was always competing for good grades. And so when they gave the awards away and recognized people, that my name was going to be mentioned. So that's kind of an inner thing, and then just kind of gravitated to the quarterback position as a result of that.
Yeah, I'm trying to steer you down a path where you can answer that question with humility, because it's okay to know that you got something, and you had to know early on after they switched you over from you were running back, you said, before you became a quarterback, or
No,
the
I
other
was,
quarterback went to running back.
I was the quarterback, but I was a backup quarterback. Yeah. No,
And
you really don't know that early. You're
no,
just out there feeling it out. Something's going. I mean, I knew I was a good athlete because we actually started out playing baseball, and we played over at the Southeast League. And I was really a good young little league baseball player, and actually grew into a good team baseball player. As a matter of fact, a lot of people thought that that was going to be my pro opportunity, because I played shortstop, covered a lot of ground, had a good arm, hit the ball well, had several batting championships, home run championships as a young person. So my early name that spread around town as an athlete actually started on the baseball field.
and there was probably close to 40 teams in that era, baseball teams in Harrisburg in that league. I know baseball was huge in
Oh
Harrisburg.
yeah, I think
back
there
then.
probably were at least 6 leagues, maybe more. Every league had at least 8 teams or so. I mean, about 700 or 800 kids.
Right.
Those are some of the numbers that I remember. About 700 or 800 kids participated in the various leagues, and they were all bona fide standalone leagues that ended up kind of playing each other
Right.
off in some playoffs and some all-stars at the end of the year. But yeah, Little League baseball was very big when I grew up.
So let's jump into, once you did become quarterback and once you were playing at John Harris and winning, your teams were 33-0 in 3 years. That's phenomenal. There's some really, really good teams that don't go undefeated for 3 years in a row. And it was just a legendary football program at John Harris. A lot of us know that. What about Coach George Chomp? How'd you like playing for Coach Chomp?
I loved it. He was a good coach, very good coach, innovative, looked ahead, knew how to use the talent that he had. Was very blessed, I think, to get the Harrisburg job, because when you got there, one thing you knew you had some horses now. How you were going to use them and how things played out, you don't know until you get into game day. But we were always well prepared, in shape, very enthusiastic. They had a lot of motivation techniques that kept you up and kept you interested in what we were trying to accomplish. So he was ahead of his time as a high school coach, and I think he was ultimately rewarded for it by the kind of career that he had in college and also the pros.
Sure. Yeah, he kept kind of rising there for a while after that, and until he decided he wanted to go back to high school football. What about the other coaches on the staff? Who stuck out?
Well, we had the who's who of coaching. So, so when you look back, it was just a special period of time of things coming together and people coming together. But you talk about Mickey Minnick was on that staff, Harry Chapman was on that staff, Jim Dibler was on that staff.
Ray Ernie, or not yet?
Ray Ernie was there when I first got there. I think he left. I don't think Ray was still there. I think he left when I came up as a sophomore, but he was on the previous success that the Harrisburg John Harris team had at that time. So just those coaches alone being named let you know the kind of coaching staff we had. They all went on to have individual successful careers as head coaches, either at John Harris, John Harris, Cumberland Valley, Jim Dibler, Stilton, and Harrisburg. And so when you have that kind of leadership, and then you have the kind of athletes, the kind of community, the kind of parents that existed at that time, the support system that was there, one pulling for pretty much all the time. It was really the perfect storm of people coming together and maximizing the opportunity to be great.
And who are those poor teams that were also very good over those 3 years, but just couldn't beat John Harris? Were there some big rivalry games that you guys that kind of kept close?
Well, I say this all the time, and I'll continue to say it. Stilton High Spire was our benchmark. We knew that we had to get by them. And if you look at the history of the games, the narrative that exists for John Harris could be totally different in the blink of an eye. We played Stilton my sophomore year. We had a fumble recovery by Charlie Jackson. I think Jesse Rawls might have caused the fumble. Charlie Jackson picked it up and ran some 40, 50, 60 yards for a touchdown. We win the game 6-0. We go down to College Hill the next year, and Gary Penn makes the tackle to create the fumble. Charles Blue Fields picks it up, runs it in for a touchdown, and we win the game 7-0. We come back up to Severance Field my senior year. We finally get the offensive explosion that people had been looking for the 2 years before. Very tight game all the way down to the end. I was fortunate enough to break free on a quarterback sweep and run 40 yards for a touchdown late in the game. And we win the game 34-27.
Oh, wow.
All three of those games could have been won by Stilton.
Unbelievable.
So, my hat's off to those guys. They came and played every single time. And there was just no way that game was going to be separated by more than one touchdown during that era, because that's just how good they were. So, as you know, you got to be lucky along the way as well. So we got some good bounces. We were a tremendous team. We had some great athletes. We had great coaches and whatnot. But without that little bit of luck, you don't do the kind of things that we were able to do.
Right. So how about William Penn? Were they any threat during the time you were there? I know that was your big rivalry, or one of your
No, they were
rivalries.
never a threat during the time that I was there. You know, they had good athletes, but they just couldn't pull it together. And we used to play them every Turkey Day. And, you know, we had some pretty sound victories against them on the Turkey Days that I played there. So, you know, that's just the way that went. But they had some tremendous athletes up there, some tremendous guys that I have a lot of respect for. But we were just that well-oiled machine at that time. And if you didn't come and put out the best performance that you could, you weren't going to hang with us very long.
Right. So now let's kind of jump into your senior season. You're playing well. Your team's playing well, very well. And you start getting a lot of looks from colleges, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
They're looking for a quarterback, and a lot of people want Jimmy Jones. And you know, your team's 33-0. You're All-American, which is you have to be elite to be an All-American. What colleges were looking at, like the main ones that you kind of took seriously?
I'm going to boil down to it. It was Ohio State, Michigan State, Penn State, Kansas, and USC.
And I asked this of every athlete I interview. What was it about USC that kind of hooked you, that you liked the most?
Well, I think every athlete probably answered the same. You just get a feel that this is the right place for you. You just kind of fit in. But more than that, because of the quarterback position, I was kind of looking at where can I really play, and where can I play as early as possible, and what major big university could I do that at? Because one of my goals after a while, I really started considering myself as like, you know, I can play at all the big schools that I've always sat and watched on Saturdays growing up. So that became a goal, is that if I qualified for it, I wanted to go to one of the big major schools, and USC provided the opportunity. They checked all the boxes.
They were big, they were major, they were winners.
They were big, they were major, they were California, the
Right.
Sunshine, the Rose Bowl, all those things. You sit around and say, wow, those are some nice things. Wouldn't mind trying some of that kind of stuff out. So when I went out there for my trip, I just felt like I belong here. And great school, you're going to get a great education, you're going to have some great contacts, and here's where you're going to be able to get a chance to play quarterback. And the reason I knew that was because there was no incumbency. And I don't know how I tracked into that so young in life, but I did look at the fact that where was there going to be somebody that already had big years and that they were sophomores, juniors. Ohio State kind of lost out because of that. Rex Kern had come in, and he had done a great job. I think he led them to a national title his first year as a sophomore. And even though I think I came out about the same time, but the gentleman that they had before that. But I knew that Rex was going there, and I knew that Charlie Dudish, I think he was up for number one as well. He ended up going to Georgia Tech. But I knew that USC didn't have any incumbent quarterback, even though they had some big name that turned out to be big name football people. Mike Holmgren was there, and Jim Fossil was coming in as a junior college transfer. Mike Holmgren was already there. Unfortunately, he had a series of injuries that prevented him from really getting any playing time. He had no meaningful playing time. They were bringing in another, and I think it was a junior college transfer. Mike was there. And they were bringing in 3 freshmen, which I was one of them. None of us. So you're talking about a balanced playing field. I felt that was the most balanced playing field that I could ever have hoped for at a major college university. And so
freshman ball was separate back then, right?
Pardon me?
Separate. Freshman ball was separate back then.
Yeah, separate.
Right? I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just wanted to make sure.
Varsity, so you're just going to go on campus your freshman year and learn the ropes. But when I looked at that, I said that can't be much fairer. None of us have really done anything at USC. So best man should win the job.
Right.
And I was fortunate enough to be the best man. So
it was 1968, pretty turbulent time in America, for multiple reasons, especially I think for African Americans. You had, on top of the riots and we're 4 years removed from the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and a lot hadn't changed yet. Throw in the Vietnam War, and what was life like for, let's just say, an 18-year-old African American man in 1968? Were you able to be kind of insulated from that stuff because of your stature, because of who you were, or were you kind of in the midst of it just because of being 18 and it being such a prevalent issue at that time?
No, we were in the midst of it.
Okay.
We were all in the midst of it. I think Kent State came out during that period of time. I remember, I think it was my freshman or sophomore year. We shut down the schools. We didn't even end up having a full school year. So all the turbulence that was going on at that particular time, you were involved in it one way or the other. So, but athletes, and I think people in general, but especially athletes, they have a tremendous ability to compartmentalize things.
Mm-hmm.
And your home and your safe haven and whatnot is normally the basketball court or the baseball field or the football field.
Right.
So we were so tunnel visioned on those kinds of things that it kept us grounded, and we were fortunate enough not to have to get too involved. But there were things that we had to face up, that we had some responsibility. We had some social responsibility. So we had to make comments in the paper and those kind of things because people were asking those kinds of questions. So we didn't get away from it totally. But again, being able to absorb yourself in the sport that you were in and be inside the university, where at least inside the university, they tried to make sure that those kind of things weren't impacting you on a regular basis, or weren't impacting you to the degree that you didn't want to be at that particular school.
Right. Okay. So what was it like playing for Coach John McKay?
It was interesting because John was a very interesting person. He was very aloof. I probably had a chance to know him better than any of the other athletes because I was a quarterback and he had to talk to me. But most of the other players on the team really didn't know John at all because everything happened through their assistant coaches. He wasn't a big guy to come around and do a lot of chit chat. That was the time when a lot of coaches had towers. I think Bear Bryant had a tower down where he was. John had a tower out there at SC, and they'd come out to practice and go up on the tower. And every now and then when they didn't like something, they'd yell down or say something like that. But other than that, your day-to-day, every play interaction was with your assistant coach. But like I said, I had a lot of interaction with John, so I got to know him as a person because we had to talk in meetings, and I sat with him riding on the bus to the games and those kind of things. So I got to know him as a person, and he was a good guy. He was a good guy, but he was a funny guy, and he had quick wit about him. So he would say some really strange, funny things that would crack you up. But good football coach, good man.
Good. So your most successful season, I believe, was your sophomore season there, right?
It wasn't
The teams most. The teams
in terms of winning, which is the major thing. Yes, in terms of establishing all the school records that I was able to establish while I was there over that period of time, my junior and senior year were the years where I really blossomed. That showed that there was some promise there for professional ball. My sophomore year was just, and I'm glad it kind of happened that way because winning cures all evils.
Right.
So we were in and out of a lot of games. We got the name of the cardiac kid because we were always coming back at the very end, and I was always making some kind of play, a touchdown pass here or there. I set the school record for touchdown passes that first year. I think I threw 11 or something like that.
At a time when there was a lot of running going on in college football.
Well, yeah. I mean, the football game was totally different.
And you guys had great running backs too.
Yeah, the game was totally different. It was totally different. You played for a balanced game. You played for the running attack to be established first, and then you balance that off with the passing attack. Passing for a couple hundred yards back then was like passing for 400 now.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but that all worked out really, really fine. I enjoyed that play, and I always kind of patterned my success on the numbers that the quarterbacks in the pros or the quarterbacks in college that I admired, the Joe Namaths, the John Unitas, and those kind of things. So back then, if you were a 50% passer, you were really a good passer. If you were up 55% or higher, I was looking at some stats a couple of years ago, and these guys were Hall of Famers, even all the way through their pro careers and whatnot. And their numbers were like 56%,
right,
57% and that. So those were always some goals of mine, is like, are you matching those kinds of numbers? Because those are the kinds of numbers that the big stars are able to accomplish. So my junior and senior years when I was able to really start to do that. And they got used to, and we were changing from a dominant running attack with Mike Garrett, O.J. Simpson, to a more multi-purpose offense where we still had Clarence Davis, who was a tremendous running back, but we were spreading things out more. We were throwing the ball more. We were using my option abilities more. So it took a while through that sophomore year, and they had the gloves on me my sophomore year as well. They weren't trying to put me in any bad situations so you pretty much knew that at that point, SC was pretty much going to throw on third downs.
Right. Every
now and then we'd mix something in with the first down or the second down. We were pretty much going to throw on third down. So it's hard to be a really, really successful quarterback when everybody knows you're throwing on third down and you're a sophomore and you're learning the ropes. So,
right,
as I said, the first year passing percentages, I don't think I passed for 50% my first year, but had success with touchdown passes and had success with winning ball games. So we were undefeated, 10-0-1, and we won a Rose Bowl. So that kind of set the stage for me to give me an opportunity then my junior and senior year to kind of prove what kind of quarterback I could become.
Right. You got some winning out of the way early, right?
Yeah, you need it because without, again, it's how do things play themselves out. Having those kind of statistical numbers and not winning that first year could have been the end of Jimmy Jones quickly. But
and
the
you
fact
guys
that we won gave me the opportunity then to settle in, learn the ropes. And then by the time I was a junior and senior, I knew what the heck I was doing out there and was able to move the ball around. Like I say, unbeknownst to me until the final end is that when I left there, I was the total offensive leader, and they had some tremendous people, including the O.J. Simpson. But I was the total offensive leader for the in the history of the University of Southern California when I graduated in '72. So, that spoke volumes and gave me a lot of confidence that I could play the pro game as well.
So you got a whole lot accomplished there, basically.
Yeah.
Individually, as a team, for your school, kind of proved that, or definitely proved that Coach McKay brought the right guy in when he was at your house in Harrisburg going, we really want you here with us. And that has to be a good feeling,
Yeah.
You knew they made the right decision. They knew you made the right decision. And you really maximized the opportunity at Southern Cal, it sounds like. How about I don't think that an interview can go by without asking you about the cover of Sports Illustrated. Okay. Uh, I'm 58 years old and I grew up loving sports. And the only point I'm making there is I couldn't wait until the new edition of Sports Illustrated came out every week. And what was it like? I mean, what was it like being Jimmy Jones in that was 69, maybe, I think. Yes,
Yeah.
1969. You know, you're a winning quarterback. You're a quarterback to start with, but you're winning. You're in Southern California. Now you're on the cover of Sports Illustrated. What did that feel like?
I think a lot of athletes will tell you this is that the hype wasn't the way that it is now. I mean, me being the type of person that I am, I was never really a braggadocio kind of guy. Pretty much humble, quiet, kind of stayed to myself.
You're grounded. I can tell you're grounded.
It was nice. It was nice, but it wasn't overblown.
Right.
It was a surprise, something that I wasn't even thinking about, as far as making the cover. I know they came and did an interview. I thought I might be in the book somewhere along the way. So for it to come out and have me on the cover after such a short period of time, I mean, it was my first pro game my first college game in Nebraska. So to hit the cover of Sports Illustrated that quickly was a surprise. So I just kind of took it in stride and kept the ball moving. It was nice, but it wasn't like the day where everything's being put out on all kind of platforms and you're bombarded with everybody's news and information. There's an article here, you move on. There's an article in a magazine, you move on. Most of the players were a lot more humble. There was some. If you look back in those times, I don't even think you would really see a celebration at the end of a touchdown or anything like that. We just used to run off the field and maybe give each other a little high five. And we were very mellow and cool about our success because back then, the act that everybody was celebrating was what we were looking for. We weren't looking to do any extra celebration.
Right.
Scored a touchdown, let everybody else go crazy. We expected to score the touchdown. So that was the mindset of athletes back then. So we never really took our success and tried to make it bigger than it was. We just enjoyed the success that we were having.
Right. So now it's time you're wrapping up your college career. Did the reality of being a black quarterback kick in when it came time for you to look at your opportunities in the NFL? What was the thought process there? What were you seeing from other black quarterbacks, which there weren't many in the NFL? And did you feel like you may have had a shot?
Well, there's no question, but the reality of being a black quarterback kicked in actually at Edison and then multiplied itself as we continued. But out of all the records and all of the other stuff, one of the things that was in the back of my mind as I was going through it is that I knew that I was, and I used to say this, it's interesting that the John Harris was called the Pioneers because I did recognize myself as being a pioneer for black quarterbacks. Mm-hmm. So that was something that I carried on my shoulder all the time is that, part of the motivation of being successful wasn't just for me, but I knew that I was one of the guys that was being looked at as somebody that's going to open some doors. Hopefully it's going to give some other people some opportunity to see that blacks can play that position. So that really made me focus on all the details of becoming a quarterback. So I was very good in the classroom, film studies and all those kind of things. That's basically how I won the job. I mean, it wasn't just my ability to go out on the football field and be physically capable of doing the things that I did. They knew that I was the best guy for the job to lead the team because I knew what I was doing. I called audibles early. Probably half the touchdowns that I threw my sophomore year were checked to audibles. So that was me seeing and doing certain things and them saying, oh, wait a minute, he picked that up, So that was part of my motivation. So going into that and then being successful at a university like Southern California, there's no doubt that I felt that I was deserving of an opportunity to see whether I could be successful at the next level.
I mean, the elephant in the room here is that at least at that time and for a good bit of time after, black quarterbacks were looked at by a lot of people as not smart enough to make it at the highest level. I mean, let's face it, I didn't really know if I was going to bring that up or not. And you just talked about all the things that made you qualified. And it wasn't just because you were fast and had a strong arm. Yet and still, most black quarterbacks weren't taken seriously. And that's something that you had to try to overcome.
Yeah, I mean, that was part of systemic racism and discrimination that existed in the NFL at that time, not only at the quarterback position, but all leadership positions. If you look back then, blacks were not supposed to be able to play quarterback. They were not supposed to be able to play center. They were not supposed to be able to play middle linebacker. And were not supposed to be able to play free safety, because those were all the thinking positions. Those were all the guys that had to make the calls and whatnot.
Kind of the captain positions. Yeah.
Those were some of the positions that blacks gravitated into along the way. But a lot of good ball players in all those positions were locked out of those positions, just like the quarterback position.
And you know, 2/3 of the NFL now are African Americans, and the NFL's getting along just fine, aren't they?
Yeah.
I mean, they're kind of prospering. I mean, it's a great product, and it's viewed and followed more than ever before. And so, yeah, I'm just kind of at the age where I remember, you know, I grew up during those times, and I just liked seeing, you know, more and more blacks be able to play at certain positions, coach, just be involved, because, you know, most of us, or some of us, knew back then that it really wasn't a fair shake, and that given the opportunity, we would see, and we have for sure.
Yeah.
So you ended up walking away from football for what, a year?
Yeah, a year. Yeah, I didn't get drafted. I did get an opportunity through the kindness of a USC defensive coordinator, Coach Dick Curry. He went to the Denver Broncos to be, I think, their defensive coordinator with John Ralston. John Ralston was taking his first pro job at that point. And he gave me a call and said, you know, I've mentioned your name to Coach. I know you want to play quarterback. You might have to come in and maybe the side door. But I did talk to Coach, and Coach said that they'd like to take a look at you at wide receiver and defensive back. But he would be very interested in giving you a look at quarterback while you were in camp. So at that point, that was the only opportunity that was on the table to even get a chance to play quarterback. So I went for that and went to their camp. If there's any other position that I think I would do well at, would have been wide receiver, which I did. Played well, made some nice catches. I think they had like a 3-day mini camp during the spring. Went up there, had a nice little article. Jimmy Jones seems to be able to catch anything that's thrown to him. So was friends with Ahmad Rashad at that point in time. Leland Nelson, who played up in Oregon with Ahmad, who was Bobby Moore at that time. Marlon Briscoe and some of those guys would come over to USC. A lot of the pros would come over to USC and practice over there.
Marlon Briscoe, the first starting black NFL quarterback, correct?
Marlon Briscoe.
Yeah, he was the first black quarterback to start in the NFL.
Right.
Okay, I didn't mean to interrupt you. This is for
the
viewers at home.
Marlon kind of filled my head a little bit about the process, because he had been through it and all that kind of stuff. But
right.
To take the shortcut, did well at that position. Went home. Eddie Beverly had gone to Arizona State and was tutoring me along the way as well.
Harrisburg's own Ed Beverly.
Yes, John Harris is Ed Beverly. So we worked out. I got myself a pretty good receiver position. Went back to camp in the fall, and I'm in the receiver room, and I'm looking for my playbook, and they're calling out the people who are in there taking attendance. And I said, Jones, and he says, Jones, what are you doing in here? You're supposed to be over on the defensive side of the ball. I said, oh, yeah. So no notification, no anything. We're going to switch you at the last minute. So kind of the handwriting was on the wall that I was just being played with.
Right.
But back then you're taught never to quit anything. So I jumped over and Tried to play a little bit of defense. I think Cornell Green? I think Cornell Green was a big Billy Thompson. They had some really good defensive backs back then. They kind of saw what was going on, so they rallied around me and gave me a lot of support and everything. And by the time I got cut, I was making some plays. I mean, I had a couple of interceptions from making some good reads back there, but I was way too far behind the curve to actually make a professional team at any of those positions. So I stayed and got cut I guess it was the cut right before the first exhibition game. Okay. So I was out of football after that for an entire year, and I had decided I was going to do something else with my education. Was fortunate enough. Well, I went and did a program with Chrysler Motors for about 6 months. Realized that I wasn't cut out for the office yet. Still had a lot of football and a lot of things I wanted to try to accomplish. Got an opportunity to join a sports management firm called World Sports Management. So for about the next 6 months or so, I was flying around the country, going to different colleges, trying to get senior athletes to sign with our sports management company. And during that process, we landed Johnny Rodgers, 1972 Heisman Trophy winner. Johnny was playing the NFL against the CFL. He had an opportunity, he had some leverage there. CFL made him the highest paid football player in the history of the CFL, so he decided to sign there. And during the negotiations, my name came up as being a part of the management team. And Marv Levy, who was the special teams coach for the Washington Redskins, was taking on his first head coaching job up in Montreal. When my name came up, he said, "Jimmy Jones from USC." He said, "Yeah." He said, "Is he still in any kind of shape? Does he still want to play football or not?" So that word got back to me. He gave me a call and he said, "Hey, I always thought that you deserved a shot. I liked you as a quarterback. And if you want a shot, I'll give you an exclusive shot at only quarterback, a free agent opportunity to come up to Montreal." So I took the opportunity and the rest became history. I went up and things worked out well. And I was able to put in a good 7-year career up there and get myself a Grey Cup championship, which is equivalent to the Super Bowl, and be in another Super Bowl, which we lost a hard-fought game in the coldest weather I've ever played in my life. We lost, I think it was a 10-7 game to the Edmonton Eskimos.
So you now had 3 successful football careers: high school, college, and professional.
Exactly.
And with respect for time, I want to take the last few minutes and talk about, because there's a lot of years in between, 1980, I think, when you retired from the CFL to today. I know you did some coaching. You've had some real jobs, right? You said you had some careers outside of football, and you're a minister too, correct?
Right. Well, I really only had one career. When I came out of football, I went primarily directly into the ministry, just to call to work with young people. There was just something there, being an athlete, knowing the importance of role modeling and having good males around good young males. I was just drawn to that. So when I came back to Harrisburg, joined forces with a couple of other pioneers, the Elby brothers, Dan Elby, his brother Mike. They opened up a youth agency called Alternative Rehabilitation Communities.
ARC.
Joined on with ARC, for about 6 years, and really got my feet wet and cut my teeth on what it really looked like to deal with young boys, young men, young boys who didn't have the proper home foundations, and how they could go way off and go left real fast without some good mentorship. And that kind of stuck with me after that. Then I moved and went to run some programs for the Urban League. Stayed with them for a while, and then I was really deep in, and that was all ministry work as far as I was concerned. Then Bill Alexander from HB Alexander Construction Company, he was losing his affirmative action officer, and I was called in to see whether I was interested. And actually, I turned him down. I said, because I'm really into the ministry and I really don't see how that fits. We talked more deeply about what my role was going to be. It's kind of like opening doors for the quarterback. It would have been like opening doors for, African-American workers and companies to kind of break that systemic racism that existed in the construction field. Once we got to that level of the discussion, I could see where it fit my ministry. So I spent about 10 years with him doing that kind of work, all in this at the same time. He was gracious enough to give me the type of schedule that allowed me to coach. So I coached, started out coaching basketball. Started out coaching football, offensive coordinating. I was 3 different offensive coordinators for 3 or 4 different coaches at Harrisburg High. Coached basketball with Carl Rachelson, and we had a very successful run of basketball coaching. So all that was being done at the same time that I was doing these other things with my youth ministry. And so really spent 35 years doing that. Then when I came out of working with Bill, I opened up my own consulting company to continue that kind of work for a while. And then just felt this draw to get back and work with young people on a more consistent basis. And I finished off my youth career as a counselor at Susquehanna Township and retired from the counseling position in 2013.
Okay.
So it's been a very fulfilling ride, and I've had a chance to work with a lot of wonderful, wonderful kids, a lot of wonderful people, try to make Harrisburg still a great place for, kids to grow up and for people to come together and hopefully experience the kind of life and childhood that I had living and growing up in Harrisburg.
Well, Harrisburg is very fortunate to have you, Mr. Jones. I mean, without people like you, and I think there was a lot more people like you maybe 30, 40, 50 years ago. We talk about the Police Athletic League and the Boys Club, Boys and Girls Club now. Some of those doors aren't open and available like they once were. And I can tell that some of the things you've been doing are along the same lines. And most of that stuff is just making yourself available, saying, hey, if you want somebody to hang around with or somebody to educate you or to mentor you, I'm here. And, without people like you, the ride is a whole lot rougher for most of these kids, and I could tell that you had people in your life like you're trying to be with these kids when you were young, because the theme of this whole interview has been kind of how grounded you've been and were able to stay throughout success, really. People think that adversity and kind of tough times are necessarily the most difficult time. Sometimes it's tough to deal with success too. And you've done very well at it your whole life. And I admire that. And my hat's off to you.
Well, thank you. I think it's really a testimony to the community and the era in which I grew up. I consider the period of time, let's say between, let's say 1960 and 2000 were probably the most progressive years in the history of our country. Everybody was like this. I'm using that term, nothing's that complete, but the majority of the people during that period of time were concerned about quality neighborhoods. Mm-hmm. So, and that's what's missing now. I mean, I can't remember a neighborhood in Harrisburg that the parents weren't almost exactly the same. They looked out for one another. They chastised other people's children when they were wrong. They would go to the other person's house and let them know what was going on, back and forth, back and forth. That's what kept everybody in line. And I think that's what's missing today, is that the neighborhoods basically have turned into hoods. Mm-hmm. But we had real quality neighborhoods back then. I don't care whether you lived in the projects or whether you lived uptown or whether you lived on the hill. When you went to those neighborhoods and you got to learn who the parents of certain kids were and whatnot, the lion's share of people were trying to do the right things and make sure their kids were morally sound, that they were trying to do the right thing, that they were trying to stay on the right side of the law, and that they were treating each other fair and respectfully. So when you grow up in an environment like that, you produce a lot of people like a Jimmy Jones, and there's a ton of Jimmy Jones that live in Harrisburg, that have come out of Harrisburg, And I'm not just saying Jimmy Jones and the black community. I'm talking about the race relationship, even during that turbulent time. And I talk about this with a lot of my white friends who we are good buddies still to today. We all appreciate that when we were coming through school together, we really didn't get caught up in a lot of that kind of stuff. We just enjoyed one another. We enjoyed our school experience. We enjoyed the sports that we played or any extracurricular activity that we played. We respected one another. And that's what's lost right now. And I don't know if we're going to be able to get it back. Hopefully we will. But I think that young people today are at a loss for not having that kind of consistent environment to grow up in.
I agree. And we cannot find a better place to end it than with that. I really appreciate this. This has been a thrill for me, Mr. Jones. I've only been doing this 8 years, but this is absolutely the biggest thrill that I've had in my 8 years of covering high school sports. And we just really appreciate it. Great story. You've been a star everywhere you went, but you've been humble throughout it all. You're still out there, putting yourself out for the community. And thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome, man. And Joe, just on a little side note to end, so many people who are close to my age right now, and I appreciate it. I really do appreciate it. But so many people will still call me like Mr. Jones.
I'm 58, man. I can't find another way to address you. I was thinking about it today.
That's what they say. I say, hey, you can call me James or Jimmy or something like that now. I said, no, Mr. Jones.
Yeah.
No, Mr. Jones. I appreciate that respect.
I swear the whole day I'm thinking, I can't call him anything except for Mr. Jones. I just didn't have it in me.
I appreciate that. But I always say, you won't be disrespecting me. I said, because, you're, it might be somebody who's like 68 or 65 or something like that. Mr.
Right.
Mr. Jones.
Right.
Or even some of the younger kids that I coach and whatnot who are grown men now with their own families and whatnot say, hey, Mr. Jones. I said, I'll still go with coach, but I'm going to give you the respect as a grown man that you can also call me James or Jimmy or something like that. And others laugh. No, you'll always be Mr. Jones to me. I appreciate that. But
Thank you very much.
It tickles me sometimes when that happens.
I appreciate it. Thanks for spending time with us.
All right. Thank you.
Take care. Thanks for
You
tuning
too.
in, everybody.
All right. Take care.